The Amish have long been renowned for their exceptional ability to preserve food in ways that stand the test of time. This isn't just about keeping food edible, it's about maintaining quality, nutrition, and flavor for years, sometimes even decades. But how exactly do they manage this? Let's delve into the traditional methods that make these foods virtually eternal. First up is canning, a method where food is sealed in jars or cans and then heated to a temperature that destroys harmful microorganisms. This process creates a vacuum seal, preventing new bacteria from entering. Canning is effective because the heat treatment eliminates bacteria, yeasts, and molds that could spoil the food, while the vacuum seal keeps out air and contaminants. When done correctly, canned foods can last for many years without needing refrigeration. Commonly canned items include vegetables, fruits, and even meats. Think of staples like tomatoes, green beans, and peaches that you might find in any Amish pantry. Next, we have fermenting. This process involves using microorganisms to break down sugars into acids or alcohol. Not only does fermentation preserve the food, but it also enhances its flavor and nutritional profile. The acidic environment created during fermentation inhibits the growth of spoilage organisms, and the resulting probiotics can be beneficial for your gut health. Popular fermented foods in Amish kitchens include sauerkraut, pickles, and kefir. These foods can last for months and sometimes even years. Drying is another crucial technique. By removing moisture from food, drying prevents the growth of bacteria, molds, and yeasts that thrive in moist conditions. This method leaves the food lightweight and easy to store. Dried foods can be kept in airtight containers and remain viable for a long time without refrigeration. The Amish commonly dry beans, herbs, fruits, and meats. Dried apples and jerky are just a couple of examples. Lastly, let's talk about root cellaring. This method involves storing root vegetables and other produce in a cool, dark, and humid environment. The natural preservation properties of this underground environment help keep produce fresh for extended periods. The consistent cool temperature and high humidity slow down the decomposition process. Vegetables like potatoes, carrots, and beets can be kept in a root cellar for several months or even up to a year. Understanding these techniques helps explain why Amish foods are not only long-lasting but also incredibly reliable. Each method plays a vital role in ensuring that these foods remain fresh and nutritious no matter how much time passes. #Food 1, Home canned vegetables. Home canned vegetables are a cornerstone of Amish food storage. Properly canned, they can last indefinitely without the need for refrigeration. This method not only preserves the vegetables but also ensures they retain their flavor and nutritional value. To properly can vegetables, start by selecting fresh, high-quality produce. Wash and prepare the vegetables according to their type. Some may need to be blanched before canning. Sterilize your canning jars and lids by boiling them in hot water. Pack the prepared vegetables into the jars, leaving the recommended amount of headspace. Pour hot brine or water over the vegetables, making sure there are no air bubbles. Wipe the rims of the jars clean and place the lids on tightly. Process the jars in a boiling water bath or pressure canner, depending on the type of vegetable and your recipe. Once processed, let the jars cool completely and check the seals before storing them in a cool, dark place. Properly canned vegetables, when sealed and stored correctly, can last for many years. #Food 2, Dried beans. Dried beans are not just a nutritious option, they're also incredibly durable. When stored in a cool, dry place, dried beans can last for decades, making them an excellent addition to any long-term food storage plan. To prepare dried beans, start by sorting and rinsing them to remove any debris. Soak the beans overnight in plenty of water to help them rehydrate. After soaking, drain and spread the beans out on a baking sheet to dry. You can use a dehydrator or an oven set to a low temperature to ensure they are completely dried. Once dry, store the beans in airtight containers or vacuum-sealed bags to protect them from moisture and pests. Keep them in a cool, dark place, such as a pantry or cupboard. Properly dried and stored beans can remain viable for many years, maintaining their nutritional value and taste. Food 3, Hardtack. Hardtack is a historic staple that has been used for centuries as a long-lasting food source. This simple, dry biscuit is known for its durability and ability to last for years without spoiling. It's an excellent example of food that stands the test of time. To make hardtack, mix flour and water to create a stiff dough. You can add a pinch of salt if desired. Roll the dough out and cut it into small squares or rectangles. Poke a few holes in each piece with a fork to help with even baking. Bake the hardtack in an oven at a low temperature until it's completely dry and hard. This could take several hours. Allow the hardtack to cool completely before storing it. Keep the hardtack in an airtight container or vacuum-sealed bag to protect it from moisture. Store it in a cool, dry place. When kept under the right conditions, hardtack can last for several years, making it a reliable and enduring food source. ###food for homemade sauerkraut. Fermented foods like sauerkraut are not only packed with flavor but also boast a long shelf life due to their acidic nature. Sauerkraut, a type of fermented cabbage, benefits from the natural preservation qualities of lactic acid fermentation. To make homemade sauerkraut, start by shredding fresh cabbage and mixing it with salt. The salt helps draw out the cabbage's moisture, creating an environment that promotes the growth of beneficial bacteria while inhibiting spoilage. Pack the salted cabbage tightly into a clean fermentation crock or jar, ensuring that the cabbage is fully submerged in its own juices. Place a weight on top to keep the cabbage submerged and cover the container with a cloth to allow gases to escape while keeping out dust and insects. Let the sauerkraut ferment at room temperature for several weeks, tasting periodically until it reaches the desired flavor and tang. Once fermented, transfer the sauerkraut to airtight containers and store it in the refrigerator or a cool, dark place. Properly fermented and stored sauerkraut can last for several months or even longer. Here is the next segment of the text. ###food 5, honey. Honey is one of nature's miracles, renowned for its exceptional preservation qualities. Thanks to its natural acidity and low moisture content, honey can last indefinitely without spoiling. This makes it an incredibly reliable and long-lasting food source. To ensure honey remains in optimal condition, store it in an airtight container to prevent moisture from entering. Keep the container in a cool, dry place away from direct sunlight and heat sources. Avoid using wet utensils to scoop honey, as this can introduce moisture and potentially cause fermentation. If honey crystallizes, which is a natural process, simply place the container in warm water and stir until it returns to its liquid state. Properly stored honey can last indefinitely, maintaining its quality and sweetness. ###food 6, cornmeal. Cornmeal is a versatile pantry staple that, when stored properly, can last for many years. Its longevity is primarily due to its low moisture content and the presence of natural preservatives. To extend the shelf life of cornmeal, store it in an airtight container to protect it from moisture and pests. Keep the container in a cool, dark place, such as a pantry or cupboard, away from heat and light. For even longer storage, consider vacuum sealing the cornmeal or freezing it to protect against potential infestations and spoilage. Ensure the cornmeal is fully thawed and brought to room temperature before use if frozen. Properly stored cornmeal can remain viable for several years, making it a dependable staple in your food storage. ###food 7, canned fruits. Canned fruits, if prepared correctly, can last for many years and offer a sweet, nutritious option that's convenient and versatile. Proper canning not only preserves the fruit but also maintains its flavor and nutritional value. To ensure proper sealing, start by selecting ripe, high-quality fruits. Wash and peel them as needed, then cut them into uniform pieces. Prepare your canning jars by sterilizing them in boiling water and also boil the lids to ensure they are free from contaminants. Pack the fruit into the jars, leaving the recommended headspace to allow for expansion during processing. Pour hot syrup or juice over the fruit, ensuring it covers the fruit completely and that there are no air bubbles trapped inside. Wipe the rims of the jars with a clean cloth to remove any residue that could interfere with the seal. Place the lids on the jars and screw on the bands until they are fingertip tight. Process the jars in a boiling water bath or pressure canner, following the specific times and pressures required for the type of fruit. Once processed, allow the jars to cool completely and check the seals. Properly sealed and stored canned fruits can last for several years. Hashtag food 8, dried herbs. Dried herbs are a fantastic way to preserve the flavors of your garden or kitchen year-round. When stored correctly, they can maintain their potency and aroma for a long time. To dry herbs, start by harvesting them at their peak flavor, typically just before they bloom. Rinse the herbs to remove any dirt or insects and pat them dry with a clean towel. Bundle the herbs in small bunches and tie them together with string. Hang the bundles upside down in a well-ventilated, dry area away from direct sunlight. Alternatively, you can use a dehydrator or an oven set to a low temperature to speed up the drying process. Once the herbs are completely dry and brittle to the touch, remove the leaves from the stems and crumble them. Store the dried herbs in airtight containers or vacuum-sealed bags to protect them from moisture and light. Keep the containers in a cool, dark place. Properly dried and stored herbs can retain their flavor and potency for up to a year. Hashtag food 9, salt pork. Salt pork is a traditional preservation method that has been used for centuries. It's a reliable food source that can last for extended periods, making it a valuable addition to any long-term food storage. To cure salt pork, start with fresh pork belly or shoulder. Rinse the meat and pat it dry. Rub a generous amount of salt over the meat, ensuring it's evenly coated. You can also add sugar, nitrates, or other seasonings if desired. Place the salted meat in a container and cover it with more salt, making sure it's well packed. Allow the meat to cure in a cool, dry place for several weeks, turning it occasionally to ensure even curing. After curing, rinse off the excess salt and let the meat air dry completely. Once dry, store the salt pork in a cool, dry place, or wrap it in airtight packaging and freeze it for long-term storage. Properly cured and stored salt pork can last for several months or longer, maintaining its quality and flavor. Hashtag food 10, pickled vegetables. Pickling is a preservation technique that extends the shelf life of vegetables for years while adding a tangy flavor. The process involves immersing vegetables in a brine solution, which helps inhibit spoilage and promotes a distinctive taste. To pickle vegetables, start by washing and cutting them into desired sizes. Prepare a brine by combining water, vinegar, salt, and optional sugar or spices, depending on your recipe. Sterilize your canning jars and lids by boiling them in water. Pack the vegetables tightly into the jars, leaving some headspace at the top. Pour the hot brine over the vegetables, ensuring they are completely submerged. Wipe the rims of the jars with a clean cloth to remove any residue that might prevent a proper seal. Place the lids on the jars and screw on the bands until they are fingertip tight. Process the jars in a boiling water bath for the time specified in your recipe to ensure proper sealing. Once processed, let the jars cool completely and check the seals. Properly pickled and stored vegetables can last for several years, maintaining their flavor and crunch. Hashtag food 11, beef jerky. Beef jerky is a high-protein, long-lasting food that can be stored for years, making it an excellent option for a durable and nutritious snack. The drying process removes moisture, which prevents bacterial growth and spoilage. To make beef jerky, start with lean cuts of beef to reduce fat, which can spoil more quickly. Trim away any fat and slice the meat into thin, uniform strips. Marinate the meat in a mixture of soy sauce, spices, and other flavorings for several hours or overnight to enhance its taste and tenderness. Preheat your dehydrator or oven to a low temperature, around 150 to 160 degrees Fahrenheit or 65 to 70 degrees Celsius. Arrange the marinated meat strips in a single layer on the dehydrator trays or oven racks, making sure they do not overlap. Dry the meat until it is firm and leathery but still slightly pliable, which may take several hours. Once dried, let the jerky cool completely before storing it in airtight containers or vacuum-sealed bags. Keep the jerky in a cool, dark place. Properly dried and stored beef jerky can last for several months to years, depending on storage conditions. Here is the next portion of the text. Hashtag food 12, applesauce. Homemade applesauce, when canned properly, can last for many years while providing a sweet, versatile addition to your pantry. The canning process preserves the applesauce's flavor and nutritional content. To can applesauce, Start by peeling, coring, and chopping fresh apples. Cook the apples in a large pot with a bit of water until they are soft. Mash the cooked apples into a smooth or chunky sauce, depending on your preference. Add sugar or spices such as cinnamon, if desired. Sterilize your canning jars and lids by boiling them in water. Pour the hot applesauce into the jars, leaving about half an inch of headspace. Wipe the rims of the jars to remove any residue, and place the lids on. Process the jars in a boiling water bath for the time specified in your recipe, usually about 20 minutes. Allow the jars to cool completely and check the seals. Properly canned applesauce can last for several years, retaining its flavor and quality. ###Food 13 Vinegar. Vinegar's acidity makes it an excellent preservative and a versatile ingredient for a wide range of culinary uses. Its low pH inhibits bacterial growth, making it a reliable choice for extending the shelf life of various foods. To store vinegar. Keep it in its original container with the lid tightly sealed. Store it in a cool, dark place away from direct sunlight and heat sources. While vinegar has an indefinite shelf life, it's best to use it within a few years for optimal flavor and potency. Vinegar's versatility allows it to be used in cooking, pickling, and as a natural cleaning agent. Ensure the container is well sealed to prevent contamination or changes in quality. If vinegar develops an unusual smell, taste, or sediment, it may still be safe to use but might be less effective. ###Food 14 Homemade Jam. Homemade jam, when canned properly, can last for years and provides a sweet treat that captures the flavors of the season. The canning process preserves the fruit and ensures that the jam remains safe and delicious for an extended period. To make homemade jam. Start by selecting ripe, high-quality fruit. Wash and prepare the fruit by peeling, pitting, and cutting it into pieces. Cook the fruit with sugar and pectin according to your recipe, stirring frequently until it reaches the desired consistency. Sterilize your canning jars and lids by boiling them. Pour the hot jam into the sterilized jars, leaving about a quarter inch of headspace. Wipe the rims of the jars to remove any residue, then place the lids on and screw on the bands until they are fingertip tight. Process the jars in a boiling water bath for the time specified in your recipe to ensure proper sealing. Let the jars cool completely and check the seals before storing. Properly canned jam can last for several years in a cool, dark place, maintaining its flavor and quality. ###Food 15 Root Vegetables. Root vegetables stored in a root cellar can last for months, if not years, making them a valuable component of long-term food storage. The cool, dark, and humid conditions of a root cellar help preserve these vegetables' freshness and nutritional content. To store root vegetables. Start by selecting healthy, undamaged produce. Clean the vegetables thoroughly and allow them to dry completely before storing. Store the vegetables in a root cellar or a similar cool, dark, and humid environment. Place them in bins or crates, separating different types to avoid cross-contamination. Ensure good airflow around the vegetables to prevent mold and rot. Check the stored vegetables regularly for any signs of spoilage and remove any affected items to prevent spreading. Properly stored root vegetables, such as potatoes, carrots, and beets, can last for several months to over a year, maintaining their flavor and texture. ###Why stockpiling these foods is beneficial. These foods aren't just long-lasting, they're also packed with nutrients, ensuring you're getting the best for your family. When you stockpile items like home-canned vegetables, dried beans, and fermented foods, you're not only preparing for the long term but also enriching your diet with high-quality, nutrient-dense options. For example, fermented foods like sauerkraut provide probiotics that support digestive health. Dried beans offer a rich source of protein and fiber. By incorporating these foods into your stockpile, you ensure that your family receives essential vitamins and minerals even during times of scarcity. ###Economic advantages of stockpiling. Economically, stockpiling these foods is a smart choice. By investing in long-lasting staples, you save money over time by buying in bulk and reducing the frequency of grocery store trips. Additionally, these foods help reduce food waste by providing a reliable backup supply that doesn't spoil quickly. This means fewer trips to the store, less reliance on perishable items, and more efficient use of your resources. The long shelf life of these foods allows you to take advantage of sales and bulk discounts, further stretching your food budget.